Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, teaming up with SD1 Sports to bring you the best in Big Ten football coverage and 5 reasons why Ohio State will win the Big Ten in 2019. Keep in mind, the Buckeyes, of course, dominated during Urban Meyer's time, going 86-9 overall during those 7 seasons with domination in the Big Ten. Ohio State overall, take out the Luke Fickell season as an interim coach in 2011 when the Buckeyes went 6-7. The last time Ohio State lost 2 games in the Big Ten was 2004. 15 consecutive years, the worst record for Ohio State in the Big Ten. This is remarkable. 7-1, the worst record in the Big Ten. And, of course, they took home a Big Ten championship the last 2 years at 8-1 in the conference and a win in Indianapolis over Wisconsin, then Northwestern. But, of course, a couple wild card factors at quarterback and head coach. Ohio State's going to win the Big Ten in 2019. Number one reason would be they just simply have the best talent in the conference. It's not really arguable. Penn State and Michigan have made valiant recruiting efforts and upgraded the recruiting to the extent that they're challenging Ohio State, certainly. It's not a huge gap, but decidedly the Buckeyes have been better. In the 3 classes prior to Ryan Day, Urban Meyer's 3 classes were rated number 4, number 2, and number 2 in the country. The Ryan Day class at number 14 was certainly a disappointment from that standpoint, but you have to understand the number of signees brought down the class. If you look at the average star rating, according to the 247 composite, Ohio State still ranked in the top 4 in the nation in regards to quality of each individual player. So the talent gap between Ohio State and the rest of the Big Ten still exists. Michigan and Penn State possibly closing a bit, but the Buckeyes over the last 4 seasons, the recruiting classes that make up the 2019 roster in comparison to Michigan that has recruited second best to Ohio State during that time, Ohio State has 12 5-stars, Michigan has 5. The Buckeyes have signed 60 4-stars and Michigan 53. And that's with signing less players than Michigan, so Michigan has fielded its roster with far more 3-stars than Ohio State. And again, 12 5-stars compared to Michigan's 5. All right, the number 2 reason the Buckeyes will again win the Big Ten, as they did in 2017 and 2018, is the defense will get better. It just has to get better. How can it possibly be worse than it was in 2018. What a mystery this was, that the Buckeyes continued to get ripped up with superior athletes on that side of the ball week after week after week. Everybody outside of basically Tulane gashed the Buckeyes. Even Oregon State hit up Ohio State for 2 80-plus yard runs and scoring 31 points. And, of course, the especially embarrassing efforts were against Purdue in the loss that cost Ohio State a playoff spot, 49-20. In which Purdue ripped him up all night. Rondell Moore was throwing guys off of his back, juking guys in the open field all night for the Boilers. And then, of course, Ohio State, even though they escaped at Maryland, embarrassed by the Terps defensively, as Maryland came within 1 errant throw for a 2-point conversion in overtime of beating the Buckeyes and scoring 53 points. As it was, they lost 52-51 and still racked up 535 total yards against Ohio State. All right, let's keep in mind that Greg Schiano, fine football coach, good enough to be hired by Bill Belichick at the next level, and that's pretty much where he belongs as a defensive mind and defensive coordinator. His schemes were too complex at the collegiate level. A lot to process, a lot to factor in, a lot to implement. These kids could not play on instinct, and when you've got the better talent just about every game, and certainly every game in the Big Ten, Ohio State athletes on defense should just be left to run and hit, and that's going to be the plan under Greg Mattison. He comes in from Michigan. Of course, they've had some of the better defenses in college football in recent years. I know the Buckeyes blew them up for 62 points, but mostly they played extremely well. Certainly had the best defense in the Big Ten throughout the regular season last year. So Mattison comes in, hand-plucked by Urban Meyer, who worked with Mattison at Notre Dame, and also Mattison coached under Urban Meyer at Florida. You also have San Francisco defensive backs coach Jeff Hafley coming in, where he was extremely successful there, considered one of the bright minds on the defensive side of the ball in football, pro or college. Will most likely bring that cover 3 scheme that he implemented at San Francisco that became famous as the Legion of Boom in Seattle with the Seahawks when they were going to Super Bowls. All right, Shaun Wade and Brendan White, a couple of safeties, going to be counted upon to be extremely versatile for this defense. They're going to play the safety position. That's the listed position, but they'll come up and support the run as linebackers, and the Buckeyes have struggled. The worst positional group for Ohio State football over the past few seasons in losing to the big teams in the big spots has been at linebacker. Not fast enough sideline to sideline, so expect White and expect Wade to creep up there, play some linebacker in obvious run support situations, and also play some rush end as well. They're going to line up all over the place, versatile players that are going to scare the offense. This defense ranked 68 in the nation in total defense last year. It's got to get better in 2019. Reason number 3 that Ohio State will win the Big Ten in 2019, Justin Fields. Special talent, rated the number 1 or number 2 quarterback coming out of high school football a couple years ago, along with Trevor Lawrence, depending on your service of choice. Justin Fields, yes, he had an awful spring game. Let's not blow it out of proportion. 4 of 13 passing. That is stuck in the minds of all sorts of people. And yes, it was a performance where he was showcased to show off his arm and his talent and be successful, and it was a disaster in terms of a spring game. 4 of 13 again. 2 passes batted down, but if you break down each individual pass, many of them very catchable, just slightly off in regards to timing. They weren't awful throws or decisions for the most part by Justin Fields. Let's not blow it out of proportion. This is a kid who, just from the standpoint of throwing ability, not polish yet, but ability, can match Dwayne Haskins in terms of zip on the football and him just being a different dude on the field in practice in regards to release and talent and rotation on the football. And J.T. Barrett, an effective runner for Ohio State who has all sorts of Big Ten records. Justin Fields probably a more explosive runner than J.T. Barrett. So that element is brought back into the Ohio State offensive attack. Maybe compare Justin Fields to a certain extent with Terrell Pryor, maybe somewhere between Pryor and Barrett in regards to what kind of threat he's going to be out of the backfield as a runner. Also consider that Justin Fields, in regards to his work during the spring with the number 1s, not the number 2s or the 3s at Georgia, but the number 1s and in the individual workouts throughout the summer, and Ryan Day getting his hands on him during August, a superior passing game-minded coach, and working with all that Ohio State talent that's the best offensive talent in the Big Ten, Justin Fields could explode and be a star for the Buckeyes in 2019. All right, and finally, reason number 4 that Ohio State will win the Big Ten in 2019 is Ryan Day. Urban Meyer is a legendary coach with a legendary record. His winning percentage is unmatched in modern football. Yes, Ryan Day has big shoes to fill. But first-year head coaches have done extremely well in college football. Experience at the head coaching position is no longer a primary factor. Yes, young coaches make some missteps at times, but we've seen it over and over again. First-year head coaches have been successful. Dabo Swinney, yes, it took him a few years. Kirby Smart took 2 years, but he was taking over a team not nearly as good in regards to wins and losses as Ohio State. Chip Kelly at Oregon won immediately. Jimbo Fisher at Florida State as a first-year head coach, and Gus Malzahn as well. Also able to win big in his first season at Auburn, turning around a disastrous situation at Auburn. So I think Lincoln Riley's, though, the classic example. You've got a guy who's taking over an elite program with a similar offense as Oklahoma, similar style passing attack. From an offensive standpoint, Lincoln Riley and Ryan Day very much a similar type approach and coach with a passing acumen. And they're taking over for legendary coaches. It worked well at Oklahoma for Lincoln Riley in taking Oklahoma to the playoffs. Ryan Day certainly has Urban Meyer still as a mentor there at Ohio State. 4 big reasons why the Buckeyes will defend their Big Ten title in 2019. Lock it into SG1 Sports and Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football as well. We'll see you next time.